Hey everyone, let's talk about something that doesn't get enough attention in process improvement conversations: process boundaries. Now, this actually came up from a colleague of mine who sells enterprise software. His client asked him, what exactly is a process boundary? Frankly, I'm not even sure where he learned the principle from, but it's actually a very good question. And my friend and colleague did something smart. He said, let me ask someone who actually knows. So here we are. And this is really a great question, especially for leaders who are eyebrow deep into the weeds of process optimization, but can't quite figure out why things are still clunky, misaligned, or just downright inefficient. If you're a leader deep in this process improvement and you've never heard of this term before, no worries. If you've ever tried to improve a process, maybe it's order fulfillment or customer onboarding or maybe even customer inquiries or internal tickets, and you keep running into delays, unclear responsibilities, or missed handoffs, there's a good chance that your process boundaries are either unclear or missing entirely. So let's break this down. Even the best designed process improvement plans can fail if process boundaries aren't clear. So today I want to walk through what exactly process boundaries are, why they matter, what happens when they're ignored, and how to define and set them the right way. So let's start at the top here. If you've ever done a full process mapping exercise, not a workflow, but an actual process mapping exercise, then you know one of the first things to define is, where does the process start and where does it end? Every process needs a clear beginning and a very clear end. If that's fuzzy, everything in the middle is also fuzzy. So let me give you an example. I worked with a financial services firm where onboarding a new client was taking sometimes over 2 weeks. Now, they had decent tech and good people, really committed to the work. And so that was not the problem. Well, sales or the onboarding team thought that the process started when the contract was signed. Ops thought it started after the account provisioning. Customer success, which I would actually probably refer to as like account management, they didn't think their process started until the client had completed the onboarding. So guess what happened? In the middle, dead space, miscommunication, and a lot of the time, duplicative tasks. And from the client's perspective, silence and frustration. Now, once we clearly defined those start and end points for each team and locked in the handoff, onboarding dropped down to 5 days without adding any new tools, just by setting boundaries. Now, this still sounds pretty long, but for their kind of work, this is actually a significant improvement. Next up here is, who owns what? Now, let's talk about ownership and responsibilities. One of the biggest issues I see inside organizations is when no one really knows where their job ends and when someone else's begins. This is one that I also want to include, that it can present itself as one team wears the weight of the world on their shoulders and the next team does very little. Until everyone is really clear what their responsibilities are, where the clear handoff is, and what is required for the handoff, you will continue to face this issue. I had a different financial services client, and I'm not picking on financial services today, it's just our clients, who was seeing customer issues bounce between 4 different teams. Now, each team, they all held different responsibilities within the account, which most of them were either backtracking, copying, pasting, and cobbling reports together, which you already likely know how much I dislike cobbling, and holding their own customer information on their own systems, whether that be within Excel, sometimes it was in third-party tools, sometimes I refer to that as shadow IT. There were so many different ways that these different teams were holding on to their own set of information. So no one was really sure when to escalate an issue, how to escalate, or who should be correcting the missing information. And where some of the team members used some of the systems available, others didn't, or had access to other systems and some of the other folks did not. So what happened? Customers were getting the wrong information, like reports, misaligned information, or correspondence sent to someone who was no longer in the role or with the company. When we set hard process boundaries, customers notice and retention does improve. So, again, boundaries drive clarity. And then there's scope creep. This one is a little bit sneaky, actually. I worked with a professional services firm where the client's onboarding process had quietly expanded way beyond its original scope. Originally, onboarding included things like these three core steps: client intake, contract execution, and the kickoff scheduling. But over time, different team members kept adding just one more thing: a pre engagement survey here, an extra approval layer there, a welcoming gift process, an internal review round. Suddenly, onboarding had ballooned to 11 steps. And it wasn't really formalized. It just kind of grew organically because everyone really did have good intentions. So the result here was their clients were waiting too long to get started. The operations teams were overloaded, and sales was frustrated because the momentum was lost post signature. We brought the team together and asked, what are the steps that are mission critical for onboarding? And what belongs, let's say, in account management or project planning or marketing follow up instead? With clear boundaries in place, we trimmed the process back down to 5 essential steps. Clients were onboarded much faster and the team could breathe, and everyone knew where their lane started and where it ended. So now let's talk about why this matters so much in process improvement. First, smooth handoffs. Think about your lead to customer pipeline, marketing handoff to sales handoff to onboarding, onboarding handoff to customer success. If those handoffs aren't clearly defined, who does what and when and how, you end up with a lot of confusion, missed steps, and delays. I've seen teams say, well, I thought that was your job. So in the meantime, the client is still sitting there waiting and wondering if they've made a mistake signing up, which you don't want. And here's the kicker. Sometimes people think it's a training issue or a knowledge gap, but it's not. It's actually a process boundary issue. So even if everyone knows the handoff exists, ask yourself, does everyone agree on exactly what's involved in the handoff? If the answer is maybe or no, start there. The second thing is better accountability. Clear process boundaries make it easy to see who is responsible at every single stage. And where things get delayed or messy, you can pinpoint where the breakdown happened without finger pointing. At an e-commerce company I worked with, the returns process was constantly behind. No one knew if the returns process started when the customer sent something back or when the warehouse scanned it in. Now, the warehouse was another conundrum, but that's for another video. Once we clarified the starting point for my client's team and automated their returns process, the momentum and returns hit the dock and is scanned. Suddenly, the process started running like clockwork. Simple fix, big impact. Now, the third thing here is alignment with business goals. Now, let's be honest, most processes are built reactively. Something breaks, so someone patches it, right? But when you step back and define real boundaries, you can make sure the process supports your actual goals, whether that's reducing turnaround time, improving your customer experience, or scaling operations efficiently. One client of mine was aiming for faster sales cycle, such a common story, but we found that their internal review process was a little bit muddy. The legal, finance, and sales leadership were all overlapping. By clearly defining where one team's responsibility ended and another began, we shaved 5 days off of their sales cycle. 5 days. No extra software, just clean lines. All right. So, how do you set these boundaries? Let's break it down. The first step here is map your processes, start to finish. Get super detailed. Ask, what's the trigger and how do we know it's done? These are really, really important. And I think until you start to unfold mapping out your processes, you'll understand how complicated those statements are. The second step here is assign ownership. Every single step needs a clear owner. Shared accountability is a red flag. If it's everyone's job, then it's no one's job. The third step here is communicate and reinforce. This is where most teams drop the ball, actually. You can define the best boundaries in the world, but if your team doesn't know about them or doesn't buy into them, they won't matter. So roll it out, train your people, reinforce it in meetings, and build it into your operations. Let me close with this. Process boundaries really do equal process success. If your processes feel messy, inconsistent, frustrating, look at the edges, look at the handoffs, look at ownership. Most of the time, the issue isn't your team doesn't care. It's that no one has ever drawn a line in the sand. So take a moment, pick one process, and ask yourselves with your team, where does this start? Where does it end? Who owns it? You might be surprised how much clarity that exercise will bring and how quickly everything starts to click. Thanks for watching. And if this helped you, let me know in the comments. Or if you've got a process that's driving you nuts right now, drop it in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.